When you think about true wealth, what comes to mind? Is it a massive bank account or a sprawling estate? We're often told that's what matters. But sometimes true wealth isn't found in a stock portfolio. It's found in the quiet moments of connection that can change a life. This is a story about a man who had everything money could buy, and a woman who gave him the one thing it couldn't. It's a story that asks a powerful question. What is the ultimate legacy? The empire you build or the kindness you leave behind? They called him Arthur Sterling, the billionaire who had it all. But in his last days he had no one, having driven away family and friends. He'd also pushed away a long line of nurses with his cold, demanding personality. So when a young nurse named Anna walked into his silent, sterile mansion, a place that felt more like a museum than a home, she wasn't just there to check his vitals. She was unknowingly stepping into the final test of a lonely man's life. A test that would end with a decision that wouldn't just honor her kindness, but would change her world forever. Arthur Sterling's world was built of polished marble and echoing silence. His mansion, perched on a hill overlooking a city he no longer cared about, was a fortress designed to keep the world out. But in his final months, it had become his prison. A degenerative illness locked him into a hospital bed in his cavernous master suite, a room filled with priceless art that gave him no joy. He was not an easy patient, and the nursing agency warned Anna. "He's difficult," the supervisor said, her voice a mix of pity and caution. "The last 3 nurses quit within a week. He finds a reason to get rid of everyone." But Anna wasn't scared off by the warning. She'd seen her share of tough patients in the public hospital wards. She believed that under all the anger, there was a person who needed care. Her first day went exactly as advertised. She walked into the room with a warm smile and a cheerful greeting. The only response she got was a grunt as Arthur stared at the ceiling. "Just do your job and stay out of my way," he rasped. His voice was thin but still sharp with authority. Anna's smile never wavered. She checked his monitors, adjusted his pillows, and prepared his medication. All the while she kept up a gentle, one-sided conversation. She expected nothing back, and that's what she got. The days that followed were a serious test of her patience. Arthur complained about everything: the food, the room temperature. He criticized the way she drew his blood and the sound of her shoes. He was a master of psychological warfare, used to breaking people. He was just waiting for her to break, to prove that nobody truly cared. But Anna didn't break. She met every complaint with quiet skill. When he said the food was bland, she brought him hot sauce the next day. When he complained about the silence, she played a soft, classical piece. Someone was finally treating him with dignity, not as a problem to be managed. Weeks turned into a month, and Anna became a constant, steady presence. Arthur had spent his whole life seeing people as assets or liabilities. He trusted numbers, not feelings, and yet he started watching her. He noticed the way she'd furrow her brow in concentration. He saw how gently she would reposition his frail body to prevent sores. Her touch was firm, but always respectful. He was totally conflicted because Anna defied all of his cynical expectations. She never complained, never asked for anything, and never rose to his bait. She simply cared, a concept foreign to his transactional life. So he started testing her in more subtle ways. During a tense visit from his son, Arthur was especially cruel to Anna. He berated her for being a minute late with his water. His son smirked, seeing Anna as just another employee. But Anna just met Arthur's gaze, her eyes filled with quiet understanding. "I apologize, Mr. Sterling. I'll be quicker next time," she said softly. Later that evening, the silence in the room felt heavier than usual. He expected that to be the last straw and for her to quit. Instead, she came in at her usual time, holding a bowl of warm soup. "I thought you might like this," she said, not mentioning what happened. "It's the chicken soup my grandmother used to make. It won't solve the world's problems, but it always made me feel a little better." Arthur was speechless and ate the soup in silence. It was simple, but probably the most delicious thing he'd tasted in years. For the first time, a crack appeared in the armor he had worn for 80 years. He started asking her questions, like one person curious about another. He asked about her family and her dreams of opening a small free clinic. She talked about her belief that everyone deserved dignity. He found himself listening, truly listening, for the first time in decades. Her stories were a window into a world he had long forgotten. The billionaire was slowly being disarmed by the kindness of one nurse. As Arthur's physical world got smaller, his emotional world opened up. The gruff commands were slowly replaced by hesitant conversations. Anna was a patient listener, and soon Arthur started to share. He told her about growing up during the Great Depression. He spoke of his first business and his late wife, the love of his life. He confessed his deep regret that work had pushed them apart. He even confessed his greatest fear, dying alone. He worried he'd be remembered for nothing but his money. These were stories he'd never even told his own children. Anna, in turn, shared more of her own life with him. She told him about the struggles of nursing school and her student debt. She shared the joy she felt when a patient was able to go home. One afternoon, Arthur noticed Anna looked exhausted. His tone softer than she'd ever heard, he asked what was wrong. She admitted her car had broken down, and the repairs were too costly. She was now taking multiple buses to get to his mansion. This added 4 hours to her already long day. The old Arthur would have seen this as a test, but the new Arthur felt a pang of protective anger. The next morning, a sleek black car was waiting in the driveway. A man in a suit handed Anna a set of keys. "Mr. Sterling has arranged for a car service," he said. When Anna walked into Arthur's room, her eyes wide with disbelief, he just waved his hand dismissively, trying to hide his embarrassment. "It's logistics," he grumbled. "Can't have my nurse showing up exhausted." But Anna knew it was more than that. It was an act of kindness. They were no longer just a billionaire and his nurse. They were friends. In his final weeks, Anna brought life back into the sterile rooms. She'd read him the newspaper and they'd debate politics. She had become, in the truest sense of the word, his family. The end came peacefully on a quiet Tuesday morning. With the sun streaming through the windows, Arthur Sterling passed away. Anna was by his side, holding his hand, just as she had promised. The funeral was a grand, impersonal event. It was filled with business associates, rivals, and distant relatives. Arthur's children, Robert and Catherine, stood with perfect masks of grief. A week later, the family gathered for the reading of the will. The air was thick with anticipation in the mahogany boardroom. Robert and Catherine sat impatiently, already mentally spending their inheritance. Arthur's longtime lawyer, Mr. Davies, cleared his throat and began to read. It started as expected, but then Mr. Davies paused. He looked over his spectacles at the anxious family. "And now," he said, "we come to the remainder of my estate." This included all properties, assets, and controlling interest in Sterling Industries. Robert leaned forward. This was the moment. "I bequeath the entirety of this remainder," Mr. Davies continued, his voice echoing in the stunned silence of the room, "to one person, to Ms. Anna Kowalski." The name just hung in the air as Robert let out a choked laugh. "What? Is this some kind of a joke?" he asked. Catherine's face went from pale to red with rage. "Anna Kowalski? The nurse? That's impossible. She manipulated him. He was a sick old man." Mr. Davies held up a hand to calm the erupting accusations. "If you will allow me," he said calmly, "Mr. Sterling anticipated this. He included a personal letter for this occasion." He pulled out an envelope and began to read. "To my children," it began in Arthur's shaky handwriting, "I did not leave you my fortune because I already gave you everything. The best education, a life without struggle, endless opportunities. My money, it seems, only made you hungry for more. In my final months I learned that wealth can build walls, but it can't buy warmth. It can buy care, but not compassion." The letter went on. "The person who taught me this was my nurse, Anna. She walked into a house without kindness and filled it with light. She asked for nothing and gave everything. She showed me more real compassion in a few months than I've known in a lifetime. This inheritance is not a reward. It is a responsibility. I trust her to be a better steward of my legacy than I ever was. I trust her to use this wealth to do good. She earned my respect, she earned my trust, and she earned this. This is my will." Anna, who had been asked to attend, sat in a corner, tears streaming down her face. She wasn't crying with joy, but from the overwhelming weight of his trust. The life she knew was over, and an extraordinary one was about to begin. The aftermath was a storm as Arthur's children contested the will. They dragged Anna's name through the mud in the tabloids, but Arthur had been careful, with psychiatric evaluations confirming his sound mind. His letter and detailed journals documented his reasons. They showed the profound impact Anna had on him. After a long public battle, the will was upheld. Anna Kowalski, the small-town nurse, was now one of the wealthiest women in the world. The money felt like a heavy burden, and for weeks she did nothing. She stayed in her small apartment, wrestling with what to do. Then she remembered her conversations with Arthur. She remembered his regrets and her own dreams for the future. She knew exactly what she had to do. Her first act wasn't to buy a mansion, but to establish the Sterling Kowalski Foundation. Its mission was to provide scholarships and debt relief for nursing students. This would ensure compassionate people wouldn't be held back by money. Second, it would fund a network of non-profit hospices. They would be dedicated to providing dignified, compassionate end-of-life care to everyone. She named the first one the Arthur Sterling Home for Dignified Living. It was the perfect way to honor the man she knew. It transformed his legacy from one of cold, hard cash into one of warm, human kindness. This story really makes you think about what we value. It makes you consider family, wealth, and what it means to be deserving. It's a reminder that compassion can have an impact far beyond what we imagine. We'd love to know where you're watching from today. Let us know in the comments down below. And if an act of kindness has changed your life, please share your story. In the end, Arthur Sterling's greatest legacy wasn't his company. It wasn't his billions, but the life he changed, and the countless more lives to be touched by his final act of trust. And Anna, the nurse who walked into a billionaire's lonely room, proved that true wealth isn't what you have, it's what you give. Her story is a reminder that kindness is the most valuable currency of all.